Thank you for being with us tonight. This meeting has been brought to you in part by
Let Grand Forks International Airport help you start your next vacation off on the right foot. Grand Forks International Airport offers flights to the sunny destinations of Orlando, Las Vegas, and Phoenix on Allegiant, and connections anywhere in the world through Minneapolis-St. Paul on Delta. Forget the hassle of long drives, parking nightmares, and stressful check-ins. The convenience of flying locally means less headaches and more time for you. Grand Forks International Airport, your airport, simply grand.
Know what's in this box? Well, in case your crystal ball is broken, here's a hint. Safe, reliable energy, for starters, but there's also a commitment to this community. See, at Xcel Energy, this is our hometown. So we're not just about making a living here, we're about living here. Oh, I wish I had wings. In our community, we're always delivering. Xcel Energy, responsible by nature.
Brantley Gilbert returns to Grand Forks. Fired Up Tour 2020 with special guests Chase Rice and Brandon Lay. Alerus Center, Saturday, May 2nd. Get tickets now at Ticketmaster.com. The brand new album Fire and Brimstone drops everywhere October 4th. Brantley Gilbert, live in concert. Check more at BrantleyGilbert.com.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to beautiful downtown Grand Forks, home of the University of North Dakota. This is Grand Forks City Council's Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, November 12th. Under item 1, roll call.
Weigel.
Here.
Dockler. Weber.
Here.
Mock. Here. Marshall. Sandy.
Here.
Veen. We have a quorum.
Oh, that's great. Under discussion items, item 2.1, application for Class 3 on and off-sale alcoholic beverage license for Northern Air Family Fun Center. Good evening, Ms. Dorset.
Yes, good evening, President Sandy, members of the committee. This item that you have before you, you've seen before. It's an application for Class 3 beer wine license, which comes to you for your approval. This item was tabled at the last committee or council meeting for more discussion. Since that time, the mayor, city administrator, Todd Phelan, Chief Nelson, and myself have had a chance to tour the facility. I believe some of you have as well, and have had a chance to meet with Mr. Lee and get some of your questions answered. It's always a decision of council, but his request does meet existing code, and if you should choose to approve, please know that it would always be subject to the approval of our city attorney, Howard Swanson, and departments upon inspection. Mr. Lee is here tonight to speak more about his plans for his restaurant and has visuals that he wants to go through with you of the different areas. Also, and this was included in your packet previously, is a blueprint of the space and the layout. With that, I'm going to call up Mr. Lee, and he's going to just talk to you about his plans, the controls that he plans to have in place, and give you some visuals and answer any questions that you should have. So, and the invitation's always open, I know, by him if anybody else has a chance to tour his facility. So with that, I'll call it Mr. Lee.
Great. Good evening, Mr. Lee.
Good evening, President Sandy and City Council. Thank you very much. So as some of you have toured our facility, and as we've explained our operation and our vision for what we hope to do, not only now but also in the future, for what we're looking at for not only Northern Air but for the economic development of Grand Forks and the surrounding area. I would like to point out that some of my visuals are going to look an awful lot like the tour that some of you went on, so that I can explain to the rest of you who have not had a chance to take a look at it exactly what we're looking at doing. So we'll go ahead and start with the first picture. Maybe. There we go. So that is a picture looking at from our lobby that is looking towards the area where we are going to put the kitchen and the restaurant seating area. This is another picture then from more of our front door area to just give you an idea of where that is at. So it's going to be pretty much in the center of the building. It is not near any of the attractions. It's in its own kind of separate area. People will be able to walk past there to get to the various things, whether that be, as you can see on the sign, the inflatables, laser tag, the bathrooms, that kind of thing. When you're designing family entertainment centers, you try to design them around two different areas, the arcade and the food and beverages, because that's where you want people to end up afterwards. Much like Disneyland, you end up in the gift shop, right? When you go through the different attractions and that kind of thing. So this area fits for what we're trying to do and what has historically been done in several other family entertainment centers around the country. This is a look from where our new bathrooms are going to be. This kind of gives you another visual of what that seating area is going to look like. This picture here is where all the white tables are right in this picture. That is going to be the size of our kitchen area. So it's going to be about 8 feet wide by 40 feet long. And that is going to encompass not only our existing ice cream sales right now, and pop and beverage, or pop and Powerade water sales, but also where we are going to make our own food, serve our own food, and then in the other seating area there, that's where they're going to eat their food. What we're proposing, or what we're asking for, is that beer and wine be allowed in that area, and that area only downstairs. We'll have another area upstairs, and we'll show you some other pictures and stuff for that. But there has been some discussion on whether or not, what's the definition of a restaurant. We are, in fact, and you'll see in the packet that I put in a pizza prep table and the specs, also the pizza ovens that we are going to be looking at doing. We also have a letter in there from Linnell with Culinex, speaking to that very thing, that we are looking at preparing our own food, making it on site, and serving it on site. Yep.
Yes, Mr. Weber.
So, for clarification, what we're seeing in the picture here, all these white tables, this would be the kitchen area. You said about 8 by 40.
Correct.
Size of a commercial kitchen. There'll be, this was portrayed as a concession stand in the press recently.
That's correct.
When you say a pizza oven, is this like something that I'd see at a gas station to warm up frozen pizzas? Is that what you're doing in this area?
No, this is a commercial size. It's called a Turbo Chef Fire. It's a specialized pizza oven that is considered ventless. It is actually labeled as ventless, so that you do not need a commercial hood for in order to do the commercial quantities of pizza.
Are there other places in the area that use an oven like this?
Yes, matter of fact, Up North Pizza in East Grand Forks has 4 of these.
Okay.
And for their bar and restaurant.
And this is where you're going to be pouring beer and wine as well?
No, this is where the kitchen will be. The area that we would like to serve beer and wine in one spot is going to be located upstairs, and we'll show that in some pictures.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Yep. Are there any other questions at this time? Okay, we'll go ahead and continue. So as you walk up the steps, we have 2 attractions then that are upstairs. So we have laser tag, and then on the other side, on the right-hand side where that new wall is, that's going to be the door to go through into the axe throwing area, also into the area where we are asking to serve the beer and wine. Okay, so I just want to show there that there is a separate wall, that there are not going to be kids running through there. I know there's been a lot of misinformation out as far as axe throwing and alcohol, and I'll say it again. It will be by far my lowest liability in the whole place, which is shocking. Okay, but it is controlled. There's lots of other places that have done this. A lot of the places are BYOB, which I am not interested at all, because to me that sounds uncontrollable. And yep.
When you say insurance, you mean liability insurance?
Correct. Yep.
So this area where people are going to be throwing axes, which is new to our community, will actually have lower liability insurance needs and costs for you than like the trampoline or the inflatables?
Than anything that I have by far, with alcohol in there.
Okay, all right, thanks again.
Yep. Okay, so we'll continue on. Just took a picture of the door there so that everybody can see that that's not just a wide open area that they can go into the axe throwing area. This is an active construction zone, so apologize for, everything there. What I'm showing with this picture is that there are actually 2 ways to get up into that. So What you're looking at from the first glass door with the elevator that you see there is actually the old entrance that Center Court Fitness used to use. So that will be an entrance if they want to go directly up into that area, or if the whole rest of the place is closed and this is open, they'll be able to go up that direction. Or if they're already in the facility, they'll be able to go through the door on the left. Continuing on. There I just show you a picture that it does actually go outside and that it'll have its own entrance. This is a picture of what we have been doing so far. We have been burning all of that wood and we have been installing it. Most other places, and I think that you have this on some other stuff that is with attached to files from us earlier. Most places put up particle board behind the targets, and that's it. So it does not look like this. We thought that in order for us to do it, we needed to add a little personality. We needed to make it look as nice as we could. So you'll see some pictures of the tables and some things like that we've done. We're extremely proud of those. And then here's an example. This is a video. It's a little tough to tell right there. This is one of our staff and actually throwing at the target. Everybody that took a tour, I was really encouraging to try the axe throwing. Most of the people did, and they found out that the axe isn't jumping back at them 100 miles an hour, and I mean it's like darts with axes. And you throw one axe and you go get it off of the board and you come back and you hand it to the next person, and not only is there a 3-foot area that you have to throw into, there's another 4-foot area that is completely open before you get to the tables. So there's plenty of room by industry standards. I should also mention that we are going to be an affiliate of the World Axe Throwing League, which is a governing body that sets the rules and distances, what kind of axes you can use, even what kind of wood you can use on your target and the sizes and all that kind of stuff. They pretty much dictate that. And they are the leading axe throwing organization. Some of the other things that I would like to talk about is as far as economic development. We draw several families every weekend from surrounding areas. Matter of fact, we have people in Fargo that rent a bus once a year and come up and have birthday parties at our location because we have several different attractions at our location under one roof. We have something for all of those people that come up. What we're looking at trying to do here is we've heard the need that young adults and the 20 to 40 crowd need more things to do in Grand Forks. What we're trying to do is bring something that is really sweeping the nation right now, bring it to Grand Forks. When we started the trampoline park 6 years ago, we were one of less than 200 in the country when we opened our trampoline park. They said it would never work because we were such a small community. And we knew at that point, because most of them are standalone places where they're just a trampoline park. We knew that in order for us to be successful, we had to have several different attractions underneath one roof. And if you followed our history, we've consistently added things, like we added laser tag a couple years after that. We added the virtual reality system a year ago. We're constantly upgrading the building. We're constantly upgrading the experiences, and we have other plans that are going to continue to do that to the building and to the surrounding area. We want to be an asset to Grand Forks, and to help people stop instead of just continuing down the interstate. What it's going to do for us, we're open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We're hoping that this is going to lead to where we can be open at least 2 or 3 more days a week. We can also then be open earlier in the day, since we're going to be making our own food and start offering lunches, suppers, that kind of thing. Most of our activities lead themselves to leagues, which typically end up being older, we're associated with being a kid's place. We're looking at adding more family activities for other ages in that family. I know that the question has been as far as what percentage of food versus alcohol are we anticipating. Last year we did $75,000 worth of ice cream sales, Pizza Ranch, which is just get sold to our birthday parties, and Pop and Powerade sales. With pizza on site that we are making to order, I believe that we are going to at least double that. So that means at least $150,000 then is going to be from that food side of that. I don't think we're going to reach that alcohol-wise. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. And if we do reach that, then we're going to sell a lot more food, because food and beverages seem to go together. Also in the packet, you're going to see letters from my banker and from the owner's banker. He's known us for a long time. He can speak to our character and that kind of thing. Also, we have a letter in there from Linnell at Cullinex, who we've been working with on the restaurant equipment. I can get you a list of every piece of equipment that we're looking at. The health department already has that. I was just in contact with them today, and they don't have any issues at this point with our application to be a restaurant. And like I would like to finish up with the fact that I think we're similar to a lot of places that either have been here or are here currently. We're just on a bigger scale. For example, the Planet Pizza, when it was here, had laser tag, had pizza, had alcohol. You were able to have a beer anywhere inside there. We're not asking for that. We're asking for just 2 spots. Okay, we're not going to be in any attractions. Our staff, which is located at every single attraction, along with manning the kitchen and upstairs at the axe throwing and the serving area, is not going to allow people to be moving amongst the different areas. If somebody downstairs orders some beer and wine, then it'll go upstairs to our computer system, and we will have somebody bring it downstairs and serve it. They are not, I prefer not to have the actual sale of beer and wine downstairs, because according to law, then the person I have to have down there has to be 21 and older. And I would rather keep that upstairs so that I can have somebody down there that might not be 21 yet. The same thing when somebody does have a beer, much like the Ralph does, okay, they're going to have a wristband. After they've been ID'd, they're going to have a wristband that identifies them as that they're able to have it. And if somebody has one and they don't have that, okay, then we're going to check on that. Because I can guarantee you, as hard as it's been to try to get this, okay, I'm not going to let somebody having a beer get into one of the attractions and cause me to lose it. Okay, so with that, I would open it up to any questions that you guys have.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Any comments or thoughts? Any questions? Mr. Weber?
Thank you, President Sandy. So upstairs in the axe throwing area, What ages are allowed in there?
What I would like to see, because we would qualify as the restaurant and the beer and wine, is I would like to see 13 and older with a parent. Now, the only way that 13, 14, 15-year-olds would be able to get up into that area is if they are with a parent and they have a scheduled time to be throwing axes. So if they're not going to be throwing axes, they're not allowed in there. Now, adults can come up if, let's say, a dad, mom and dad have their kids and they're going to go jump for a couple hours and they want to come up into that area and have a drink or two. Adults are welcome up there.
So 13 to 17-year-olds are going to be restricted. If an 18-year-old comes upstairs, shows identification, they can come in?
If they're going to be throwing axes.
Only if they're going to be throwing axes?
Only if they're going to be throwing axes. If they're not going to be throwing axes, then they don't have any business up there.
And to go in and throw axe, I have to go through an orientation, a training, the same as your laser tag.
Correct.
To learn the rules of the game and the
Yep.
equipment, et cetera.
Yep.
And so I have to book that in advance, or if there's an opening, I can book it right then?
You can, there are going to be some walk-ins, and they are going to be welcome if there's space available. So then if there's not space, then they're going to have to wait, much like a haircut situation or something like that. They're going to have to wait for an open target, and then they'll go through the same safety briefing, the instructional part of it, the whole works.
How long does a standard session last for the axe throwing?
Either an hour or 2 hours typically.
Okay, I can reserve a court or
Yep.
a gallery here for an hour or 2 hours?
Yep, correct.
And someone's watching and monitoring this?
Correct.
And if I'm in there with if I've brought in my 17-year-old son or grandson, we would be welcome to stay for the hour or 2 hours that we have the lane reserved.
Yep.
At the end of that, I could stay, the 17-year-old would need to go on to something else.
If they're waiting to axe throw,
Okay.
or they just got done axe throwing,
Okay.
and say, for example, in golf, okay, if you want to come back into the clubhouse and have a drink and talk about what you did axe throwing and stuff like that, okay, we're not going to have a problem with that. What I'm telling you is that anybody that's coming in that is not going to be throwing axes or just finished throwing axes is not going to be allowed to stay.
Okay. And I didn't previously realize you're currently only open on Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
That's correct.
Is one of the intentions to have this open more nights?
That's correct. Yep. I think most places like ours are open 7 days a week. What we have found that we don't have enough attractions yet that are geared to older, young adults and the 20 to 40 crowd.
Okay.
To allow us to be open, to open up the whole building for that particular time. We think axe throwing is going to be able to allow us to do that, because once we get them to come in for that, then they'll notice that we have laser tag, they'll notice the state-of-the-art virtual reality system that we have, and it'll spread to those things. So I think that we're going to be open. I think we're going to be able to get the whole facility open at least 5 days a week.
Oh, the whole facility?
The whole facility, I
So I
believe.
could come in with older kids and younger grandkids. The younger grandkids could be in the trampoline park, the trampoline area, and older kids could be in the axe throwing. And that would be, instead of just Friday, Saturday, you're expanding this, so more opportunities for this kind of activity through the winter.
That's correct. That's what we're hoping happens because of this.
While you were talking, I was looking, and Fargo already has an axe throwing location.
Correct.
And it looks like Minneapolis has an axe throwing bar that's all ages as well, with birthday parties and axe throwing, et cetera. So this is something that's happening all around the country. Right?
That's correct. Yep.
In fact, it looks like the franchise that's in Minneapolis is also in Winnipeg. So it's wonderful that instead of people driving on to Fargo, we've got one more reason for them to turn in, spend a few hours here.
That's correct. Yep.
Well, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. I think before getting to the speaker cards and taking more comments from the council, since Ms. Marshall is a big reason why we ended up back here today, she sent me an email today with some comments that she wanted discussed tonight and some questions. And I think if we go through this might help us a little bit as well. Mr. Lee, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So again, these are Ms. Marshall's words. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Lee for providing a detailed tour of his facility recently. It was extremely helpful for me to get a visualization of the proposed business. Relative to the Class 3 beer and wine license, Ms. Marshall is much more formal than I would be. It's nice. Her words are very pleasant. I believe his intent is to modify his business plan as needed in order to meet the city code and council requirements and to be a responsible business owner in our community. It's a nice compliment.
Thank you.
My concern is asking for additional time to consider this request. My concern in asking for additional time to consider this request centers on the issues of minors in settings where alcohol is served. As a city, we have an obligation to assure a safe and healthy environment for our children and youth to the best of our ability. And I believe that's a big part of the negativity toward this has been people's concern about having young people around alcohol. We have an obligation to make responsible decisions about any setting where we approve commingling of youth in places where alcohol is served. We have an obligation to make informed and reasoned decisions that take into consideration precedents that may be set for future and the big picture of what we want for the culture of our community. Ms. Marshall believes we can find a win-win situation where the owners of Northern Air can provide more attractions for all age groups and build their business model while putting some limitations in place that serve to protect our children and youth in a reasonable manner. To that end, she says, I would suggest that we consider some potential options that would allow beer and wine sales through a Class 3 license in a limited section of the business. Some considerations she would ask of the council would include certain potential modifications to the license approval, including number one, allowing beer and wine to be served and consumed only in the upstairs area adjacent to the axe throwing area. This area is structured to have tight controls over how people are able to enter the area, check in and sign waivers, etc. before entering. People would have access to a menu of items prepared in the kitchen on the main floor that would be delivered up to them, and we could consider this the restaurant for the purposes of this license. So when you were, that's number one of 6 things. I want to touch on this.
Yep.
You had mentioned that you're putting the commercial kitchen downstairs. You're having a segregated area for people to order food and come and eat. Was your plan to serve alcohol downstairs there as well, or only upstairs? If it's only upstairs, that meets her first request.
Yep. What I would like to see is parents, if they don't want to go upstairs, be able to have that beer and wine in the dining area where they're sitting.
How are they getting the alcohol downstairs if you're not serving the alcohol downstairs? As Mr. Weber asked earlier, are you serving alcohol there? And you said
okay,
no.
by serving, you mean our staff is bringing it down to them?
I'm saying somebody pouring it right
Yeah.
there and handing it to the person that's standing at the counter.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll have one of our staff from upstairs
Bring
it down
Okay.
and bring it to their table.
Somebody
and-
that's 21 and has
Correct.
done all of the
Exactly.
required training for alcohol service.
Yep, because
so on.
because everybody up in that area is going to have that training.
Right, so
Yep.
just point of concern, if I'm at the counter and I'm asking to buy a beer, do I have to go upstairs to buy the beer, or can I buy it from the person that's
Nope.
running the till downstairs that might be 15 years old?
I think you can order it downstairs.
So the people that
And
are
then it'll be-
underage downstairs will be taking orders for alcohol. Do you not see a concern for that person having the intestinal fortitude, the understanding of what it is to have somebody that's of age buying the alcohol, if the person upstairs isn't actually physically seeing the person that's that's buying the alcohol.
I understand where you're going with this, and if they have more than, say, 2, then that's not our intention.
No,
Okay.
my concern is that if you have somebody that's not of age taking the order, and I understand that for example, in Minnesota, you can work as a waiter or waitress and you can take alcohol orders in a restaurant, right?
You can do that at Applebee's right now in Grand Forks.
Yeah, okay. But do those people have to have alcohol training?
They go through the training,
Right,
but
and so
you have to be
but
21
they
to
can't
pour
serve.
it.
Yes, right, and so I'm just,
Yeah,
part of my thought process is,
Yep.
do you understand that the people that are taking the orders have to go through the alcohol
Yes.
training?
which they have to go through. They have to go through server training. They have to go through safe
Great.
food preparation procedures.
Very
Okay,
good.
Yes.
Great, okay, good. Yes, of course.
So those servers downstairs would then be responsible for, say, carting, if you were downstairs in that lower area and wanted to order a beer, they would be responsible for carting, and then they'd just call it upstairs, and then somebody 21 or over
They
would
they
bring
would
it down.
have, correct.
Okay,
Yep, and they would have to give a wristband out, and and they would have to follow the procedures just like the same people upstairs. Exactly.
right, so though all of that is standard for
Yep.
any restaurant.
Correct.
They'd have to be, I don't know, is it 18 and over in order to card? Whatever it is, they would have to follow that, have that training, and they'd do that.
That's correct.
Right, okay. And just for better understanding for me, the eating area downstairs will be clearly segregated so that if I'm sitting here, I'm eating and I can have a beer, but if I step out and step across this line, beer is not okay there. That it
Well-
will be clearly delineated.
So where the tables are, where the tables and chairs are, that's the dining room.
Right.
Okay, so
but
if you walk outside of that area, then you're not allowed to have the beer and wine
Right.
past that area.
how are you going to marshal that? How are you going to make sure that people understand that?
There's going to be signage, and every single one of our staff are
Trained to know.
going to be trained to deal with that. If you go to our Hologate, our virtual reality system, which is about 10 steps away from that, okay? And you're not going to get past there.
Okay. All right. Point 2, Ms. Marshall provided, she believes that the city would grant you a restaurant license, okay? Point 3 is requiring youth enter the axe throwing area to be at least 13 and be accompanied by a parent. I believe that's already part of the plan.
Correct.
Great. Point 4, consider a possible drink limit in this area or certain hours where it could be alcohol-free. Have you considered an alcohol-free night?
I have. I would prefer not to do that, but, everybody that comes up there has the choice. I shouldn't say everybody, 21 and older has the choice to make it alcohol-free or not. I'm just simply want to, just like every other restaurant that offers beer and wine, to be able to have that as an option for those people who want it.
Sure. I'm going to skip to Ms. Marshall's 6th point, which is, as for future consideration by the council, perhaps we would want to consider better defining what a restaurant is for the purpose of this sort of, so that we don't get into a similar situation. 5th item that she's asked is, she would prefer to see no alcohol served in the eating area on the main level. She says this is very open and accessible to children and youth of all ages as they access different areas of the building or order food items. There is no real way to impose an age limit or to manage entry and exit from the area due to its open configuration, which is also my concern. It does you know, you look at the pictures, it's wide open, and it would be easy to wander off with a can of Miller Lite or whatever, right? So I'm just concerned that, that there are good controls, and I believe that it's from what you're telling me is you're going to train your staff very rigorously to make sure that that doesn't happen.
That's
Would you
correct.
consider not serving alcohol on the main floor?
So under what circumstances would I be allowed to? If I proved that we were capable of doing this? My hesitation in agreeing with that is the fact that if I say yes to that, and at some later date want to try to get it back down there, then I think it's going to be virtually impossible. So and I guess that's where the definition of a restaurant comes in, because every other restaurant in town is able to, regardless of how open or closed off it is or whatever, is able to do exactly the same thing with minors in their whole facility. And I'm not asking to do that because our facility is very large. We're just on a bigger scale than a lot of the restaurants and that kind of stuff in town space-wise.
I think, Mr. Lee, I think a lot of the reservations from the community come from the fact that you put yourself out there as an environment for young people, right?
Well, we put ourselves out there as an area for families. It
Sure.
just happens to be.
I'm just telling you that.
No, I understand.
It
I
is what it
understand.
is, right?
Yep,
I mean, people
okay.
look at your facility and say that's a facility for young people, and the hesitation comes, well, why are we promoting alcohol in a location for young people? I think as long as it's done appropriately, and everyone follows the rules, it's great until somebody doesn't, right? And that's why I think for you, just from my own personal opinion, assuming you are granted this liquor license, you will need to be very careful. Because
I agree.
everyone will be watching. Every parent, everyone that's there will be watching very closely, and the people that don't like this concept will be very quick to send messages and make phone calls.
I
So,
agree 100% with
If
you.
this does move forward, I want you to understand that it has to be done right. So those are Miss Marshall's comments. She also sent me an email that from a doctor, a physician in town, that she asked me if we'd read tonight, so I said I would. He's an MD, I don't know where he works, or I suppose it could be a she, too. I appreciate your hesitance to approve the alcohol licensing for Northern Air. We don't need to risk having intoxicated persons hurling potential lethal weapons, hatchets, and popping their kids into the car after a fun night of bouncing and playing to be driven home by a guardian who might be intoxicated. Safety should be one of our primary and never-ending goals, which I agree, safety should be, that's why we're here, is for the safety of our community and our children. Anyone else have comments? Mr. Weber, you have more to add? Oh, Ms. Dockler? Yeah, Ms. Dockler.
I do want to say thank you for giving Ms. Marshall and I a tour of the facility this last weekend. I do think that it helped us kind of visualize a little bit better and formulate some more of the questions for you. I do think that it is kind of comparing apples to oranges when you talk about restaurants that are currently licensed with Class 3, because they started as restaurants. They started with a model that they were going to be selling food and they were going to be selling booze in these areas. And even still, in some of these establishments, kids can't go and sit at the bar in the restaurant and eat their food, even though their parents can sit at a table across the way. There are still strictures on it. I appreciate that you have moved away from the idea of having alcohol in all areas of the facility, because that was kind of the request when you had originally approached the COW. However, I would have to agree with Ms. Marshall, where I would be more comfortable approving a liquor license for the restaurant if it was maintained upstairs only and not downstairs. I do still have concerns about the openness of the facility, even though I have no doubt that you would try and train the staff to the best of your ability. I have no doubt about that. It's just that I also know the nature of kids, and I know the nature of young adults. And in this current culture that we have of alcohol consumption in North Dakota, in the Midwest, to be fair, we in some ways set our kids up to fail when we give them so many opportunities to be in such close contact and to constantly watch adults imbibing. That's not your fault. I don't think that you're gonna change the culture in a day with just your restaurant either, but I do think that that is part of a larger conversation that our entire community really does need to have a conversation about and address, whether that's in restructuring our policies about what is a restaurant and what is not a restaurant, and how these kinds of things come to council, whether they should come to council or not. If this was just a simple yes or no, you meet the requirements, I don't understand why it would be coming here and then causing you so much of a headache in this. If it's a policy decision, yes, it should come to council, but perhaps we need to also look at how that's being held within city administration as well. Maybe these kinds of things should be coming to council only if, they're being denied and people want a outlet to come and say, to plead their case, have it come to council and instead being approved by administration. That's past the point. But I would be more comfortable with the alcohol only being served upstairs and then still not having minors upstairs, because truly the way that it's currently set up, it is really set up like a bar right now. Young kids, minors, are only going to be allowed to be up there during the time that they're throwing, and as soon as they're done throwing, you're not going to push them out the door, but within a reasonable amount of time, you're going to have them go downstairs, because there no longer is a reason for them to be upstairs, and alcohol is being served upstairs. I think you meant to do that as a way to kind of draw this line and keep kids out of that atmosphere, and I appreciate that, I really do. But I do think that we can take another step and remove them entirely from that situation. That's not to say that I don't think it's a really cool opportunity for kids to get involved in. And I would encourage you to consider doing, just like I had mentioned when I was on the tour with you, doing an alcohol-free either night where young people can go in with their parents, and it's not a part of the conversation or the atmosphere, or I don't know, Howard, if this is legal or not, or permissible or not, having an hour and a half, 2 hours where young families can go in and no alcohol is served at all. And then after that hour is done, to only allow people of age into the facility and then start serving again. I really do have concerns about continuing to put alcohol in those kinds of situations with our kids, especially when we have birthday parties that are going on, all kinds of group events that are going on. I worry as a parent when we send our kids out to those kinds of things. I don't want to say no to my kids going to Northern Air because they have a blast there, but I do worry about what are the protocols that are in place to make sure that the guardians that are in charge of those parties aren't getting drunk. You say the intent is that people wouldn't only drink 1 to 2 beers, but our intent is only worth so much, unfortunately, because what happens in the end is people are still responsible for their own decisions. And unfortunately, sometimes people make really poor decisions. And as Mr. Sandy was saying earlier, it only takes one to cause a horrific, terrible tragedy in our community that it will take years and years and years to come back from. And I would never wish that on you, and I don't necessarily think that that's going to happen, but I also don't think that it is necessary for us to open those doors either, to play with fate in that way.
Thank you, Ms. Dockler. I do have 2 speaker cards. I'm sure we still have additional comments, but I think we should give these people the opportunity to speak. I don't know in what order they came in. Mr. Vasicek, would you like to address the council?
President Sandy, members of the council, if you choose to grant a liquor license to Northern Air Family Fun Center. Members of the Grand Forks Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition would like the area where alcohol is sold and consumed restricted to individuals of legal drinking age, which would be 21 and older.
Thank you, Mr. Voschek. And Ms. Regenball? Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you state
Thank
your
you.
name for the record, please?
Certainly. Thank you, President Sandy and members of the council. My name is Janelle Regenball, and I'm here as a concerned citizen on the issue before you. I appreciate the opportunity to hear more about the plans beyond what I read in the paper. So, like all of you, certainly appreciate Mr. Lee's attention to the matter. I still have a few things that I'd like to raise that still are a concern to me even after hearing the plans in more detail. I think that the council has many things to consider when making such a decision, and as a resident, I would assume we all want you to be business friendly. But I will also argue that many of us would also like you to be family friendly in your decisions. The decision before you tonight, I think, is one that clearly these two worlds collide, and it becomes a dilemma for me as someone who would like to see this business thrive and see that we would like to reward people who want to continue to expand upon their business. I would say that the issues that still concern me are the fact that the serving of alcohol is not going to be separate. And I think even though I don't know how the arbitrary age of 13 was deemed as somehow being appropriate and those other ages were not appropriate, I would argue that it should not be anything but separate from sight and sound. And I would be the first to support if axe throwing became a part of the recreational outlet for adults, and I wouldn't have any problem if alcohol was served, because you sound like you have a lot of responsible barriers and boundaries put into play. I too join other people's sentiment in that it doesn't belong downstairs with the other area because it's not separate sight and sound. And in order to get to all the other aspects of the venues, people will be walking back and forth, will be engaged together there. And I feel first and foremost that this facility was billed as and is a gem in our community for family recreation. And that's the mission of it. And I'd like to see that continue to be supported by setting appropriate boundaries. Every time we pair recreation with the serving of alcohol, I'm reminded of ongoing situations when kids come into treatment and helping environments where they're struggling with mental health and substance abuse issues. Time and time again, they identify they simply don't know how to have fun without alcohol and other drugs. They've witnessed from a young age their caregivers and adults in their life having always used alcohol and other drugs as a method of relaxation, ways to quell their anxiety and stress, and they've been exposed over and over to it in the media. The more we allow alcohol to come into the wider variety of venues, the more we support that culture. So as many of you have mentioned, this is a cultural issue in our community and many others. We also know that the developing brains of young people are very malleable. In essence, what gets fired together gets wired together. So just by having these experiences on a regular basis, it becomes the accepted norm. That's why I have a problem with 13 somehow being okay to be upstairs along with adults. I bet if we're honest, every one of us in this room has had a situation, or maybe several, where we've been in a public setting and we struggle with what we've exposed our kids to. Situations that we've had no control over. Maybe it was a sporting event we attended where patrons who were intoxicated got into a fight and we quickly had to remove our children from the experience. The sad thing is, even with our protective action of removing them from the experience, we did not remove them from being exposed to that experience. And so I take this as just one more example of a community setting, a community event that now raises the risk of those experiences happening over and over, regardless of the protections that are put in place. I know I personally felt a sense of pride recently when our First Lady, Catherine Bergen, was here and said that as a community, we were leading the way in addressing the opioid crisis. I frankly would really like us to lead the way with this issue. And you have an opportunity before you to set some boundaries and to make sure that is set up in a way that is business friendly, yes, but also takes into consideration family friendly. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Ms. Regenball. Appreciate everyone's opinions. I should also mention that we received other email today as well from both a school board member as well as someone that works in the social service industry in our community, both suggesting that we should limit the alcohol license. Ms. Mock, are you interested in?
Just as a function question, for the upstairs area, so you've got, like, what's pictured is the lanes, and so, you would rent that for like an hour or 2 hours?
That's correct.
Okay, so is there a place for people who just want to watch but haven't necessarily rented a lane, like they just want to go up there? Is there like a seating area somewhere?
There's going to be a seating area, if we go back.
That other area, is that?
Yeah, so
Okay.
so right off of this counter to the right is going to, there's going to be 3 tables or so in that area. Okay, but they are not going to be, spectators themselves are not going to be allowed into the axe throwing area.
So in order to be in that axe throwing area, you have to be part of a party that is doing
You
it?
have to be one of them that are throwing them. Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Can you have, like, if the 3 of us have that space rented and only the 2 of us are throwing, is that?
Nope.
Okay, so you have to be participating in order to do that?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then in this other area, you can sit if that's what you want to
correct.
do?
Yep.
Okay,
So there's going to be a definite line where the people that are going to go into the attraction, that's where they go.
okay,
Everybody else has to stay out of there.
okay. So if you were 25 and just hanging out, you could go hang out in that area. If you were 15, you'd have to be part of a party and
Correct.
accompanied. Okay,
And I guess the reason that I'm not allowing them to stay longer is based on previous input from the city council, that they would prefer to see them not stay up there any longer than they need to. I hear a lot of conversation, and I understand where a lot of it is coming from. I think a lot of it is based in misinformation. But I still understand where they're getting their thought process. Main concern downstairs seems to be how open it's perceived to be. Okay, so what would go there that you guys would think is enough of a barrier? Is a half wall with a couple of exits in and out a barrier enough? Do we need a full wall? Does it got to be its own separate room? I guess, give me some ideas on what it is that you're thinking that would, you're saying it's too open. So what are some things that I can do? Because I'm very interested in molding whatever I need to do to make it work. Okay, the other thing is that there's going to come a certain time where this is not making ends meet. And the reality of that is that our building is located on the highest rent district in Grand Forks. I don't want to close Northern Air down and rent it out to somebody else. Okay, but I may be forced to, because I need other things. Okay, we need other revenue models to come in and to help it. Okay, that's just the reality of it.
Mr. Weigel?
My name is Don Lee, I'm one of the owners. I just wanted to give you a little background on, we spent about 3 years, a little over 3 years, okay? We went to 14 different facilities like this, okay? And all from here all the way through Wisconsin, Minnesota, Indiana. We were down in the Carolinas and Georgia, and okay, any place we could find a facility that was something like what we were talking about. Okay, we went to 3 different association conventions that are a week long. Okay, we really did our homework. Okay, and like Brian said earlier, just about everybody that we visited with was very concerned in a small market because there just wasn't anybody trying to do what we were doing in this small of a market. Okay, so how many of you have been to Wisconsin Dells? Okay, so when you went to Wisconsin Dells, what places did you go to? Did you go to Kalahari's by chance?
I was really little the last time I was
Okay,
there, so I don't
but
remember.
anyway.
I know I have been there though for
Okay.
probably kid attract.
Okay, but anyway, there's not a place that we went to and we tried to hit every place in Wisconsin Dells. Okay, there's not a place in Wisconsin Dells that doesn't offer beer. Most of them offer hard liquor. Okay, in Kalahari's, which we think is by far, I mean, they're up here when it comes to this, okay? When Brian gets done next spring, they won't have as many attractions at Kalahari's as he'll have. Okay, Kalahari's is so big, okay, they have a 250 unit motel attached right to it. And you can't get a room there. I mean, if you don't call 6 months in advance, you're not gonna get a room at Kalahari's. That's how popular it is, okay? But what they do is they have one place where they serve alcohol, okay? But they let it go. You can, if you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. You can grab your bottle of beer and you can go wherever you want. Okay, we're not gonna allow that. We just don't want that, okay? But we have so many requests, okay, for something for the older people to do. I'll give you an example.
I'm sorry,
I thought Brian was gonna have a photograph on it, but, okay, Sunday night, we had 459 kids in there. Okay, we had about 300 adults there. Okay. Okay. And what we hear, okay, is if you had something for us to do, you know, they wouldn't be so anxious to get their kids and stuff out of there. But I'll shorten it up because I know we're taking a lot of time. But folks, what I want to tell you, he's building something that you can't find from here to Wisconsin. Okay.
Great, thank you for the,
I mean that sincerely.
That's great.
That's the fact of the matter.
Mr. Weigel?
Okay.
Something
So
to add?
I'm just
Thank
going
you
to
for
add
my
a
time.
couple quick things. Chuck E. Cheese serves alcohol. I didn't know that. I Googled it, but they do. I think I understand everybody's sentiments about either for it or against it. I understand that. Mr. Lee's investing a lot of money into this project. He's invested a lot of money into his business, and if he meets the requirements that we currently have, then I'm not so sure there should be much of a discussion. If we want to go back later and say, hey, we need to look at changing what our law says or our ordinance says, I think we should do that then. But if he meets the requirements, he meets the requirements. But with that being said, I'm a father of a 5-year-old. If I don't want to go to your business because you're serving beer or liquor or wine, beer or wine, I don't have to go. I can bring my son to another place to go play, to jump. In fact, there's one right next door.
Yep.
That I could do. For $5, I can have him jump for an hour into a foam pit, jump on some trampolines and do some other things. That's my decision as a parent. So you're taking a lot of risk doing this, that people may or may not come back to your business. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So he's taking the risk. If he meets the requirements, then I understand the concerns, I really do. But me as a parent, I also take pride in teaching my son what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad. And if that's conversations I've already had with him when he asks, what is this, what is that? I've never had a beer in front of my son, but that's my personal choice. So that's something as parents that we need to take care of. If he meets the requirements, he meets the requirements. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
There's a motion by Weigel. Is there a second? Second by Mock. Further discussion? Yes, Ms. Mock?
So, I guess to that point, one issue that I do have is this isn't really a free and public facility. This is a private business.
That's
so
correct.
People do choose whether they want to come. So I think certainly there's plenty of scrutiny. It's going to have to go back through the council, so there will be another round of scrutiny. If people don't agree with it, they could certainly decide not to go there anymore. That's a risk. But it's actually not a public place. It is private. So I tend to agree with some of the other comments. I think we should look at our alcohol permits. If this is truly, if we as a city are saying that an alcohol license is dependent upon meeting specific requirements, then I'm not sure why it's coming before the council. I think we should review that. I think we should see if they should be staff issued. That's not a conversation for tonight, but that's something that we need to review then, because I don't know, I just think that's something for the future for us to discuss. Same with the definition of a restaurant, if we need to relook at that and revise or come up with a better definition if we have issues with that. But for the case at hand, we do have those, I mean, we have to work with what we have to work with. In terms of some of the issues that have been mentioned with the lower level, I would be interested if other council members or if there are ideas about a half wall that would block that off a little bit more. It sounds very much like being run as if it were a restaurant like Chuck E. Cheese, where you have a sitting area that's distinct and separate from the other activity areas, in which case it does very much sound like a restaurant. It sounds like the food aspect will be run like a restaurant. I think some of those ideas would be interesting to see if there's a better way to do that, to block that off. But I have a feeling that staff probably watch that pretty closely. Are they allowed to have food and beverages elsewhere, or do you limit all food and beverage just to that area?
Right now, they're allowed to have food and the beverages that we sell everywhere.
So they would have to watch for this specifically to keep it there?
So what we're going to do is we're going to limit food and the beer and wine to those two spots. Now, if you want to take your soda out and your Powerade to a different location, that's fine. Or water, that's fine. But all food then is going to be limited then to those two areas.
Okay.
So it's actually going to simplify some of the things that we currently do, because we do right now allow food everywhere in the facility.
So that will be a change. So
Absolutely.
People who are having a hard time with this might be thinking of the way it's currently done. You are intending that to change.
That is correct. Yep.
So it would function a lot more like the restaurants that serve food and alcohol and function as a restaurant.
That's correct.
Okay. So the original issues with having, a birthday party and they're having pizza, like the alcohol would not be associated with that.
Matter of fact, there are private party rooms where the birthday parties happen that are completely separate from that area. They are their own rooms, okay? And we are not asking for alcohol to be allowed in those, nor would we allow alcohol in those.
So if there was like a private birthday party, you wouldn't be serving down to that room? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mock. Ms. Dockler, did you have any comments?
I'm sure people just want to hear more about this conversation right now. But, you know, I would hope that my kids too are learning right and wrong, or that I'm doing a sufficient of enough job to teach them right and wrong, just like Danny is, or Mr. Weigel is for his child. But there are a lot of children in our community that don't have that kind of a privilege, where they don't have guardians that are looking out for their best interest in that kind of a same way. And so I'm thinking broader than even just what is going on in our specific homes and how we look at it directly through our own lenses. Grand Forks County has the horrible privilege of having some of the highest numbers of kids in foster care for drug and alcohol related offenses. And so I think that reads a lot into this community. And yes, it is a privately owned business, and people can take their business there or not. But again, I do think that this is part of a larger conversation about family entertainment in the community. And again, I don't think that it's the same when you compare restaurants that opened as restaurants and didn't first open as family-related fun, specifically targeting kids. I'm not saying that you shouldn't broaden your horizon and want to bring in more. I think that's great, and I think some of the ideas that you were telling us that you want to incorporate into the facility will be amazing. They'll be really fun for adults and for kids. I just don't necessarily think that alcohol needs to be sold on every single level and in the full sense of it on what you're bringing here. I think that you could still make a considerable amount of money in revenue from selling alcohol only on the top floor and not even necessarily allowing minors to be up there or having a separate time when the minors are able to go there. I still think that you would make a considerable amount of money with that addition, in addition to also the restaurant business upstairs and downstairs. I think you would still make more money in order to support some of those other ventures that you have proposed. That is my opinion. As it currently, the motion currently stands, I would not be in favor of moving it forward, but that's how this works.
Thank you, Ms. Stockler.
I'll just add one thing. I don't necessarily disagree with Ms. Stockler. But I would say that we have probably set some sort of precedence with other venues such as Happy Joe's, and I get that opened as a restaurant, but I don't go there by myself to go eat, or eat pizza or anything, but I would bring my son there. I'd say the same thing with Splashers Water Park. I don't go there to swim or go down the big tubes or anything along those lines, but it's geared more towards children. You're allowed to bring beer or wine through Splashers, whether it be right or wrong. That can be debated, and everybody can have their own opinion, but I think that we have allowed this for others in the past. I feel that if we did not allow it, we'd be setting a bad example and opening ourselves up to other issues where we're treating businesses unfairly, and I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I think, Ms. Mock, I agree. I think we should have this conversation about the process perhaps at the next committee of the whole or in February when the schedule is light, because we certainly, I agree. I'm not sure this warranted, although the debate is good, the discussion is good, I'm not sure that it necessarily needed to get here. I do think, though, that if Mr. Lee were representing Top Golf and were coming here and wanted to open a Top Golf establishment where they combine hitting golf balls with alcohol, I don't think we would be even really be having the discussion there. Top Golf all over the country. And I also believe that had Mr. Lee come to the council when he was first opening the trampoline park and said, I'm gonna cook pizzas and I'm gonna serve alcohol and throw axes and we're gonna let kids run and jump, I think everyone on the council would have voted to approve it, and it would have been great. We'd have been thinking, wow, we get another new venue and an opportunity. I think that this situation is different because you haven't been doing it in the past or serving alcohol in the past. For me, this is all about, do you meet the requirements of a restaurant? And if you do, then you should be, in my opinion, given the the permit, or the alcohol license. I don't think that we should be saying one meets the requirement and gets it, and the other one meets the requirement and doesn't get it. I don't think that's a reasonable policy for us, personally. So, any other thoughts, Mr. Weber?
Question. I was in 11 o'clock Saturday morning. It was great to see so many kids running around exercising on a cold Saturday morning. What time would the axe throwing start? And what time would you start serving beer and wine? Because we've heard booze, but there's no hard liquor here. This is beer and wine, right?
That's correct. It's only bear and wine.
So what are the hours? How does that line up?
So the hours of axe throwing are probably going to be longer hours, more open hours, I should say, than the normal regular northern air area. My guess is that beer and wine probably won't be sold until the afternoons.
Oh, could you bring that back as a specific part of the proposal next week? Or, because I'm hearing a request for alcohol-free hours for the axe throwing, and now I'm hearing that that's probably already part of your plan.
It's similar to when, for example, like the trampoline park, okay? People ask, when's the best time to bring the young kids in? Okay, the young kids typically come in earlier in the day because we're not as busy, there's more space for them to run around in. And as we get gradually later in the day, that age starts to increase and increase and increase. I look around at other places, and my guess is that the beer and wine sales are going to mimic most other restaurants. You're going to be very light during the noon time to early afternoon, and it's probably going to pick up a little bit as you go through the night. We don't plan on being open past 11. Okay, we plan on, because I prefer not to get into those late hours, just because as far as drinking goes, that's when it's been proven to be more issues. Okay, I don't want to create an area where people are getting in trouble. I want to create a social experience, much like Mr. Sandy was talking about with Top Golf. Okay, you go there, you're able to have a drink or two, and you're able to have some fun with some friends. Okay, and it's not our intention at all to cause any harm to anybody.
Good.
I mean, it's a bad business model for us, yeah. and just like it's been pointed out, we're the ones taking the risk. If this doesn't work, I get to sell my house, and we get to figure out plan B and plan C on how to make it work. So I've put a lot of thought and into whether or not this makes sense. And
I've heard some suggestions that somehow there's, if the council grants you a class 3 liquor license, it doesn't suddenly make drunk driving legal. So that's kind of an odd argument. Similarly, Happy Joe's, we don't go, well, what if people start just carrying beer out into the parking lot? That's not a concern. You would have to follow the laws of a class 3 liquor license. However, I'm still hearing that part of your business model, and it might address some of our concerns, if axe throwing was available until 3 o'clock and you didn't start, you could start, when do you open on a Saturday morning?
10 a.m.
10 a.m. So I could go in and throw axe at 10 a.m. I could take young adults or older children with me. And is there a time when you're thinking about, I don't believe, what is a class 3 liquor license? What are the time restrictions on when beer can be sold under a class 3? Is there a time when that starts? Thanks, Ms. Dorset.
Yes, Mr. Weber, members of the committee, the closing hours would be 2 a.m. and I believe it's 8 a.m. is
8 a.m. is the opening. But is it your intention to start selling beer at 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. when you open?
I highly doubt that that's going to happen.
If you could be specific for us between now and next week about 10 a.m. for axe throwing, 3 p.m. for whatever it is for beer sales. Maybe that would help calm some of the concerns that there be some alcohol-free hours available for the axe throwing. Maybe that would be helpful. It sounds like it's already part of your plan.
Well, I just don't think it's reality to, you know, to ask when is it going to actually be sold and when is it not actually going to be sold. I will definitely put some thought into, you know, when, if it makes sense in our business model to maybe have an hour or two. But under the current law, under the current way that we have to do it, if you're saying like on a Saturday morning, for example, if a college football game is being watched on the TV or something, so then is it the axe throwing people can't have a beer, but the people sitting in this area can have a beer? Or, I mean, I'm just asking because it's going to raise some questions, and it's probably going to raise more questions than it is with just.
I think Mr. Weigel was quite articulate in expressing that we have certain rules. It seems that you're meeting those rules, and I'm not asking you to be restricted to beyond those rules. However, if it works for your business model to accommodate some of the concerns, that would be a useful part of our conversation next week.
And I appreciate that.
Thanks.
All right. Any other comments? I think I am going to say that contrary to what the esteemed school board member emailed us today, our passing and approving this liquor license doesn't mean that we aren't concerned about the welfare of the kids in our community. I thought her email could be one of the most ridiculous emails I've ever seen.
Who was that, by the way?
You're welcome to put in a request for open records.
Sounds good. Thank you.
In response to that, this is a difficult issue for me because I find myself in the uncomfortable place of not readily aligning with people, either this evening's speakers or those individuals who emailed us this afternoon, who are allies in working to improve the well-being and the public health of our community. But I'll also go back to what you said, Mr. Sandy, earlier. I'm thrilled that this building is not sitting empty on 32nd Avenue. I'm thrilled that we have regional and Canadian shoppers have one more reason to pull off the highway and not drive on by and stop into town. So, thank you, sir.
There's a motion and a second on the floor. Any other additional comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-3. Mr. Duckler dissents. Thank you. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
That will be referred to the city council next Monday, so I suggest you come for the Monday night meeting. Very good. Item 2.2, food license code updates. Good evening, Mr.
Good evening,
Dodd.
President
How are
Sandy,
you?
members of the committee. We have some code adjustments in recognition of some state law changes with cottage foods and exempting them from licensure in the city. Also cleaning up our food establishment definitions to specifically list out the different types of food establishments that we do license: restaurants, groceries, especially the institutional types of facilities. Also recognizing work that we've all been doing ongoing for public food services at childcare facilities, as well as soup kitchens, food pantries, those sorts of things that benefit our community. We've always inspected them as food service, and what we're asking is that we would go forth and license them as well as is best practice and is recommended by the State Food and Lodging Division, as they do fit what a food establishment is. So we're asking to add childcare and soup kitchens, food pantries into our licensure structure. I don't have a specific fee recommended for you. We have been doing that. They have met our food code. So we've been doing it all along. If you want to have zero fee, that would be acceptable to us. They provide a good service to our community. Other things in this code cleanup is just specifying that mobile food vendors would have all the necessary equipment to their particular operation, as they can have various types of operations as an integral part of their unit for their annual licensure, and then specify where their commissary and storage locations are as part of that licensure. I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Mr. Weigel?
I guess my concern with that, I don't want to see a fee attached. I think with childcare, I think there's many burdens that we go through in trying to find childcare, and I think you put one of those other burdens on there and having to pay a fee. So if others may agree, I'd recommend no fee attached to the soup kitchens or the childcare centers for licensing.
Ms. Dachtler?
I would second that.
I'll make a motion to approve it with the recommendation of zero fee for those two categories.
Is that a second, Ms. Dachtler? Yes. Great. Moved in second. Ms. Mock, question?
What does removal of the fee do to budgets? Is that something that is?
We've been doing it all along without licensing them.
Okay.
So it isn't a change in our practice. It just best practice to actually give them a license, and actually giving them a license with our MOU with the state food and lodging that would exempt them from needing a state license. So we're just kind of cleaning things up between us and the state. They've told us that they should be a licensed establishment, these child cares. And so we're asking to do that so that they would, per our MOU, be exempt from the state licensure.
So taking that fee wouldn't upend any budgets?
Nope, it wouldn't change our budget if it was a zero fee.
Great. Any other comments, Mr. Weber?
A couple quick. So on the same point, I doubt that it's the intention of the motion that cooking facilities and childcare would not be inspected. You would still continue to inspect them?
We would continue to inspect them as we always have.
Also, under cottage foods, this is part of the Century Code. Are church suppers included under cottage food, or can you tell us a little bit about cottage food?
There's a debate on cottage food, but baked goods are allowed from home-based kitchens. It extends into what you would think of as farmers market type food products. There is debate in the language that was put in the Century Code of what other food and drink was intended to mean, with varying things, but the context of it is kind of limited to lower risk foods, expanding what you might see at a farmer's market in value added food products from farmers and baked goods and those sorts of things.
Very good. More specifically to like church suppers, is there anything in the code, I'm not seeing it, but could it be under institutional facilities, such as schools, childcare facilities, etc.? That how would that work? What currently happens with church suppers?
The intent of our inspection is for facilities that would provide public food services as kind of a business model. And so private activities of private groups are not things that we would look at in terms of food code inspection and requirements.
And for these issues, we would consider churches to be private affairs rather than...
Right. We do not do, churches or private groups. What we would do is like a food pantry is kind of along the lines of a grocery store or taking some food product and then just making sure that those foods are safe. We have done that all along. They do meet our codes. We should license those as best practice.
Very good, thanks. I'm ready to vote.
Great. Mr. Weigel?
I guess I just want to make sure I reflect that I wanted to put food pantries in there as well. All three categories, not just the two, but throw the food pantries into my motion as well, if Ms. Dockler would agree.
Ms. Dockler nods, she agrees. Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Very good. Thank you. Item 2.3, reappointment of Sean Clapp to Grand Forks Convention and Visitors Bureau Board. Anyone have any issues with that? Is there a motion by Mock, second by Weber? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 2.4, 2019-20 amended snowmobile route. Chief, good evening.
Good evening, President Sandy, members of the committee. Basically, what we're asking you to, information only, but the only thing that's really changed from last year's route and working with the Greenway personnel is opening up that area in the vicinity of the Kennedy Bridge that was off limits last couple of years due to construction in that area. As we look at this, a lot of thought's been put into this, working with the local snowmobile clubs, what makes sense, not changing the route up every year. So basically, this would be the same thing that we would have had last year, only now adding that area back into the Kennedy after direct coordination with Greenway staff.
Great. Thank you, Chief. Any comments or questions? Yeah, Mr. There is nothing to move.
Nothing to
This is
approve,
info.
information.
Great. So thank you, Chief. That's great. Item 2.5, budget amendment for the Narcotics Task Force HIDTA Grant 959318.
Once again, thank you for entertaining this. Basically, this is a housekeeping issue. I will be here with you every year. We have to ask as the fiscal agent for the HIDTA grant. So the Grand Forks Police Department manages the grant and works directly with our Narcotics Task Force. This just merely brings the revenue and expense into the 2019 budget so we can reconcile our budget along with the task forces.
Great. Is there a motion by Weigel? Great. Second by Dockler. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, appreciate it. 2.6, bids for project 7974, Washington CPR from 8th Avenue North to 4 miles north of Gateway Drive. Mr. Walker, good evening.
Good evening, Council President Sandy, members of the committee. So this project is being proposed by the North Dakota Department of Transportation, and it's intended to be a preventative maintenance project. It's going to start just south of 8th Avenue North and then continue north to about 0.4 miles north of Gateway Drive. And it also includes the portion of that goes up and over the English Coulee diversion. Both of those pavement sections were constructed in about 2001, and the project would include replacing cracked and broken panels, pavement grinding, dowel bars, and other miscellaneous repairs. If you recall, bids for this project were originally opened back in April, but the DOT decided not to award the project at that time. Rather, they decided, I should say, that they would rebid the project, and instead of constructing it in 2019, they would construct it in 2020. So the project was rebid last Friday. The DOT received 2 bids, with the lowest bid being from Op Construction. And this project is a regionally funded project, so that means that the DOT will actually award the project, and the contract will be between the DOT and Op Construction. They're asking for us to concur in award of the bid. This project includes a 10% city funding, so and it does not include a share on the portion that goes up and over the English Coulee. So for this roughly $2.4 million project, the city's share is about $125,000, which would be from the Street and Highway Infrastructure Fund. Lastly, I'll point out that when the staff report was written, that we did not know that the DOT would concur in award or review the bid documents and be ready to award. We received word from them today that they're ready to award. They're just waiting for our concurrence. So with that, staff's recommendation is to concur in the award of the contracted low bidder Op Construction in the amount of $1,400,730.90.
Any questions? Seeing none, moved by Weber, second by Mock. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, motion carries, very good. Quick question on that one, I'm sorry, I should have asked this before. Are there gonna be any incentives to get that done in a reasonable amount of time, or is that gonna be a project that's gonna drag on?
I don't believe that there are incentives on that, but of course there are liquidated damages. They give them a certain window of time to get done, and if they don't get it done in time, they charge liquidated damages.
Great, thank you. 2.7, engineering agreement, project 8059, paving North Columbia Road.
So this project consists of reconstructing North Columbia Road from north of University Avenue to the overpass. It would utilize up to $4.376 million in federal funds through the Urban Roads Program. The agreement that you have in front of you is for preliminary engineering only. And the engineer for this project was selected on the basis of proposals that we had advertised an ad in the Grand Forks Herald and on the website for firms interested in doing work, this type of work, to submit proposals for the project. We received proposals from 4 firms, and of those 4 firms, KLJ was ranked as the most qualified for this project, and a scope and fee was then negotiated with them. The contract is based on an hourly not to exceed contract amount, and the work includes gathering public input, doing the preliminary surveys, doing the environmental permitting, project cost estimating, and other preliminary design considerations. The project would include, in addition to being reconstructed, the pavement would include new streetlights, sidewalks, traffic signals, ADA compliant handicap ramps, and will also include rehabilitating the pedestrian underpass that's underneath Columbia Road at 2nd Avenue. In the future, when we get the okay to proceed with the project and get the environmental document completed, we would be back to add final design engineering services, which would include doing the plans and specifications, and then construction engineering if the project is awarded. And that would be by a future amendment or a separate agreement. The total project cost is estimated currently at $6.3 million, and there is federal funding available that for the project, but capped at $4.376 million. There are ineligible items that are 100% local funding, which includes the preliminary engineering, the design engineering, utility relocations, and land acquisition. The local share of the project currently is estimated at $1.9 million to be funded from the Street and Infrastructure Fund. Lastly, I'll point out that this project was not included in the 2019 budget. We had intended to start this project in 2020, but we felt that we really needed to get going on it, so we're starting it now. The intent would be is that we would fund this agreement from projects that are under budget in the Fund 4815, or if needed, we would do a budget amendment from cash carryover. With that, staff's recommendation is to approve the agreement with KLJ for preliminary engineering services in the amount of $266,409 and approve any necessary budget amendments.
Can I ask the obvious question first? How in God's green earth is it possible that doing 2 blocks of concrete costs $6 million?
It includes a lot of work. We'll be doing storm sewer work. You have to do the.
So it's not just refurbishing the road.
We're
doing all of the underground work as well.
You're doing all the storm sewer work, just like we did down at Demers. In addition to that, we'll be putting storm sewer from University through that intersection. All the street lights, all the traffic signals. The traffic signals, there's 2 sets of those. I don't remember. Those are like
$700,000.
Yeah, $700,000 a piece.
Expensive. Okay, all right. Okay, Mr. Weber.
You could probably do this on a weekend, Dana. This is the sidewalk on the west side of the overpass is a heavily used sidewalk. That's incredibly problematic in the winter in terms of trying to clear snow out of there. You can't dump the snow down on the railroad tracks, and so it ends up being a wind-blown, icy mess. And this is used by a lot of university students coming from the Bowden. Will there be some effort to design a sidewalk in there that will take care of these problems? In fact, I asked for this years ago, but can it be made a covered sidewalk? This gets students from the Bowden, that upper floor of the Bowden, almost all the way to campus.
Are you referring from the end of the overpass, or are you referring to on the overpass?
Okay, maybe I'm misunderstanding the project. I was talking about on the overpass.
So this project is to repave the street up to the overpass?
Just up to the overpass?
Yes.
Really? This is why you were asking? Yeah. I was assuming.
One city block.
So,
$6 million.
in addition to that, this will likely go about a block north of University Avenue, because one of the things we want to do is straighten out the alignment or reduce the severity of the alignment of going through that intersection. So we'll probably end up going closer to 4th than we are to University.
But this won't be affecting the actual overpass?
Correct.
Will that, when will that be done? In 2030 or?
We have a project scheduled
yes,
with urban funds. I don't remember the year. Do you remember the year, Al?
I want to say 23, but.
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay. When again? 23?
23, I
Yeah.
think.
That will come to your next committee of the whole.
Okay. Yes, really? Yeah, all right. One other quick thing. It seems that there's, I've been complaining for a while that we don't get federal money anymore, but we seem to have been receiving a lot of federal transportation funds lately. Is that right? Did the logjam finally break loose, and is this funding that we've been putting on hold for years? How is it that we're suddenly getting so much federal money for roads?
Well, we've been getting federal money through our urban program. We did Columbia previously with urban funds. I don't know that we had that other projects, I guess, that we've had was a lot of transportation enhancement, bike paths, and we're getting some regional funds as well.
I think, if I may, the federal dollars we get under the urban program is about $2 million or so a year. But I think part of what you're seeing, though, is sometimes these projects are $4 million or whatever. So sometimes you'll have a year when you won't see much money, and other years you'll have more. In addition, the governor created a new urban grants program for the downtown area. So that's kind of new money that hasn't been seen before. I mean, it's only a recent, so I think that's maybe why it looks like that perception of money versus not money. It is a little irregular, but it has more to do with the programming and the size of the projects than a logjam or not a logjam situation.
These last two projects are big projects, and the city share is just 10%. So 10%-ish in that range.
This one's close to 20%, but.
Oh,
yeah, so this
doesn't have the
This
state.
one's about 33%.
Yeah. This one is 20 on what's eligible, but there are things that are not eligible, such as the design engineering and preliminary engineering.
Right, and the engineers are
So
always taking a considerable chunk of the.
I'll save my glee. Okay, thanks.
the last thing I'll point out is, in regards to your statement, is that we've been getting a number of regional projects. We had traffic signals on Gateway Drive going on this year, and then also on Demers. Those were monies that don't come to the city. Those are regional monies that the DOT controls, as well as Demers Avenue. That was a regional project. Next year, it'll also be overlaying a 5th Street, which will be another regional project. So.
All right. Any other comments?
I'll move approval.
Moved by Weigel, second by Dockler. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Again, item 2.8. Engineering amendment for project 7540, District 567, Oscarville Storm Sewer, my favorite topic.
So this project has been before you a number of times. It involves putting in a storm sewer system, stormwater pond, pump station, discharge ditch to serve the area that we've been referring to as Oscarville. If you remember at last committee and council, we awarded bids for the construction, and now we're taking it to the next step, which is to get the construction engineering on board. The original agreement that we had with the design engineer included only design of the project, and now this amendment would add construction engineering to that agreement. This agreement would be based upon an hourly not to exceed contract, and the cost of the agreement would be special assessed to the benefiting property owners, with the exception of the city's 50% share of the pond. It's staff's recommendation that we approve amendment number 1 with WFW Engineering for construction administration services in the amount of $339,595 for this project.
Any comments? Moved by Weigel, second by Mock. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Engineers are getting rich in our community. 2.9, federal funding request for Highway Safety Improvement Program. Good evening.
Good evening, President Sandy and members of the council. What you have before you is a federal grant request for the Highway Safety Improvement Program. This is a grant program funded by, this is a federal program funded through the FHWA, and the North Dakota Department of Transportation is soliciting for their program. Overall, kind of a brief summary on this one. This is kind of a project or a program where we have seen a significant amount of funding come through in the past, most notably the 32nd Avenue Corridor Left Turn Lane Improvement Project, which is about a $7.4 million project, which will be starting off next year, I believe. This request that staff is recommending is for right turn lanes at the intersection of 32nd Avenue and South 20th Street. This is an intersection that is one of the few intersections that is signalized that doesn't have right turn lanes, and this is an attempt to reduce the number of rear end and same direction side swipe accidents. With that, staff is recommending approval of the 2024 Highway Safety Improvement Program funding request, and direct staff to submit the approved project to the Grand Forks East Grand Forks Metropolitan Planning Organization for submission to the NDDOT.
I'll make a comment. I wish we would put in the right turn lanes when we do intersections like this, when we're originally doing them. I think I've said this 4 million times. I understand that the right turn lanes might not be necessary at the time we're constructing these intersections, but over and over and over and over again, we go back and put in right turn lanes. I don't know why we do it. I do know why we do it. I don't like the fact that we try to save $12 today and pay $500,000 5 years later. I don't understand it. It makes no sense to me. Nothing personal, David. I know you didn't do this. Mr. Weigel moves approval. Is there a second by Mock? Great. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Great. Item 210, federal funding request for transportation alternatives. Mr. Karenko.
Another program that's being solicited by the NDDOT is their Transportation Alternatives. This is a program where we have been very successful in the past in getting funding for new and improved bike paths throughout the community. At this point in time, staff is recommending submitting a project for 32nd Avenue South, just west of the interstate, and paving an existing gravel path over to South 48th Street. So it's kind of going towards our business park and towards the Minn Kota building that's out there. And similar situation where this has to go through the MPO before being submitted to the DOT.
It's a great concept. Yes, Mr. Weber moves approval, second by Mock. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you all for working so hard for our community and staying late tonight. Thank you. Mr. Weber moves to adjourn. Ms. Dockler seconds. Pardon me.
All right, President Sandy.
I was so excited.
This will be brief. First of all, President Sandy, members of the committee, I was able to look at the 2020 CIP, and that Columbia overpass looks like construction slated for 2024. The other item I just wanted to bring up is the mayor has requested that since we have a joint meeting of city school next Monday night, he wishes to move the regular 5:30 time of council up to 5 o'clock. So you can expect a directive coming from the mayor on that to you for that request, and we will adjust the meeting times on the agenda. So
Great.
that's all I have.
Good to know, thank you. So we still have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us tonight. This meeting has been brought to you in part by
Let Grand Forks International Airport help you start your next vacation off on the right foot. Grand Forks International Airport offers flights to the sunny destinations of Orlando, Las Vegas, and Phoenix on Allegiant, and connections anywhere in the world through Minneapolis-St. Paul on Delta. Forget the hassle of long drives, parking nightmares, and stressful check-ins. The convenience of flying locally means less headaches and more time for you. Grand Forks International Airport, your airport, simply grand.
Know what's in this box? Well, in case your crystal ball is broken, here's a hint. Safe, reliable energy, for starters, but there's also a commitment to this community. See, at Xcel Energy, this is our hometown. So we're not just about making a living here, we're about living here. Oh, I wish I had wings.
In our community, we're always delivering. Xcel Energy, responsible by nature.
Brantley Gilbert returns to Grand Forks Fired Up Tour 2020 with special guests Chase Rice and Brandon Lay. Alerus Center, Saturday, May 2nd. Get tickets now at Ticketmaster.com. The brand new album Fire and Brimstone drops everywhere October 4th. Brantley Gilbert, live in concert. Check more at BrantleyGilbert.com.